Folks, we are live. Rach, feel free to walk in. They can't see you.
Oh,
Oh, I'm not sure gonna.
I'm
I'm
just
sure
putting
gonna.
my headphones
Uh huh. Oh, crazy go nuts. So, folks, welcome to Tavern Chat. This is an AMA. Anybody can view. You've got to be a member to post your questions up. I will do a little background on myself for those that may not know it. And about 15, 20 minutes into this, and we got a few people watching live, I will be giving out some free memberships to the channel, which, if I was wise, which I never am, I would have had that prepped and ready to go. But why would I ever be prepped and ready to go? So let me get that quickly set up, which means that I am going to. There we go. And there we go. All right. So, like I said, about 15, 20 minutes into this, we will be able to give away some free memberships. Um, we do, I listen, I do some videos that get posted a little bit early for members. But if it's breaking news, I think you've seen that. If it's breaking news, I literally put it right up because I can't have people not catching the news as it's available. That's a weird thing that just happened with. I have two screens and it didn't know what screen it wanted to be on, so I guess it's going to be on neither screen. Go figure that one out. I wasn't expecting technical difficulties as the BI should, right? Isn't that generally speaking what happens? So, in any case, back to the live. Paul, welcome. Good to see you. So, a little background on me for those that don't know. I'm a lifelong New Yorker, born and raised in New York City, the outer borough of Queens. Went to public school here for 12 years. Went to Queens College for 8.5. I was on the extended education program. I mean, all right, maybe not the extended education program, but I certainly I took my time, and I graduated with my sister, who started 4 years after me. So take that for what you will. Um, my BA is in history, and I have joked that the only thing that my BA in history did for me, and literally, was it made me promotable on my job in the NYPD. My class was the class of '96. It was the last class of non-college required. After my class, they required 2 years of college. I had my BA in history, so when it came time to take the sergeant's exam, I didn't have to get any more education. Thank God. I did 20 years in the NYPD to the exact day. Have no regrets. I thoroughly enjoyed my job. I left working midnights. If you're single and were in the NYPD, midnights are great. If you're not worried about dating or marriage, midnights are awesome. Low stress, uh, very low key, but and extra money night diff. But no, I was done and ready to go. As for my gaming history, I started gaming. My first introduction to it was my friend Kenny. It was Christmas break, I guess, in sixth grade. The Dungeon Master's Guide had just come out, so Kenny had the DMG and no player's handbook. And my fighter Cyrus, named after, I guess, the vice Cyrus Vance, was what was he, Secretary of State? I was too politically in tune. Um, he was my first fighter. So, Paul, I was in my uh, friendly local game store today, and they had 3 issues of Far West. The OSR section was small, and the majority floor space outside of board games were Warhammer miniature games. Well, now the thing with Far West is that Pinnacle is the one that is distributing it now, that it finally came out. And with Pinnacle's distribution, I expect it to get out there. I'm not saying it's going to make waves, uh, but yeah, no, Far West is going to be, I guess, available in distribution. Um, a lot of our OSR games aren't. Okay, so the fact that there was an OSR section is pretty good because I can go to the Complete Strategist in Manhattan, and yeah, I'll probably find some Castles and Crusades. I'll find some DCC, Death Angel, welcome. But I'm not gonna, and there'll be some lamentations if you can find it on like the left hand side shelf, but it's not prominently displayed. I mean, it's hard to find. That's just that's where the OSR is at the moment. May things change in the future? We shall see. Shadow Dark is certainly making some inroads. OSC is making some inroads into the retail market. And I know Shadow Dark is an OSR. If you think that DCC is OSR, and I think that DCC is OSR ish, I'll play it. I'll play any of the things powered by DCC. They're fun at conventions. And I will gladly play Shadow Dark because it's not a complicated game and it takes away the complications of 5e. And it's designed by somebody who appreciates the OSR. Kelsey is an OSR by heart. So, God bless her. She's done a yeoman's job in getting that 5e OSR crossover out there. And I know a number of third party publishers, independent OSR publishers, who have resentment toward Kelsey. I think they have resentment toward anyone who makes a huge success because they feel it isn't warranted, and a lot of that is the good old, well, that should be my success. Be that as it may, it is a success for the hobby. And Kelsey paid her dues. Her dues were mostly paid for in the 5e universe, and that's fine. But she's paid it. She didn't come out of nowhere. Death Angels. I have Trollor Games, 3 friendly local game stores I'd like to see CNC in. Even said I'd run games at one of them. And CNC, oh, I gave them. Well, that's good. And that's the only way, in some cases, that you're going to get them to understand that there's something other than magic. I don't even think Call of Cthulhu was pretty much at game stores. I think that's mostly conventions. But yeah, D&D is not the be all and end all. We saw that with this current ongoing fiasco with 5.5 edition, or whatever you want to call it. It is not what many of us. I was expecting, maybe not an overwhelming success, but I wasn't expecting them to screw the pooch on their second big VTT. Remember, their first big VTT got screwed because what happened? Oh, that's right. Their two lead programmers were part of our murder suicide, and that killed Gleemax. So, yeah, no, they don't have a great track record with that stuff. And they thought that they were going to move traditional RPGs to the virtual table, to the computers. And they forgot a very important thing. I think that if you're watching this video, you already know the answer. They forgot that people don't play RPGs just to play RPGs. They play RPGs to socialize with a group of friends, with their social group, their social network. And not everybody in my social network uses Windows devices. I don't. I have my whole family on Mac devices or Apple devices. So you've already alienated a certain segment of your gaming population by not including Linux and OS X. And then you needed a pretty high end computer to run the software, which again kind of punts people out. And you're not gonna just form a group up to play Project Sigil. How old were you when you first discovered D&D? I was 12. It was Christmas recess between in sixth grade, so it was end of 79, beginning of 1980. The Dungeon Master's Guide had first come out. My friend Kenny, who I'm still friends with, God bless the man. He introduced me, was one on one. I had my fighter Cyrus. He did not have the player's handbook. He only had the Dungeon Master's Guide. So this is back when making a phone call was like 10.6 cents. And he had to call a friend to find out if I leveled. And I did. Yay. Actually, I think that's the only time I ever played Cyrus. Although he miraculously made it to like ninth level over the years, because every once in a while you just added levels to him, right? So that was my first PC. My second game that was not D&D, and I was very disappointed when I got it, and I didn't appreciate it for about a year. It was Gamma World, the gray box, because I got it and it was like, well, this is a lot like D&D. However, hit points were not dependent upon your level; they were dependent upon your Constitution score. You have a Constitution of 3, you get 3 hit dice. You have a Constitution of 18, you get 18 hit dice. It was a little swingy. So that sat on the shelf for a while before I started to really appreciate it and going, oh my God, I can have so much fun with this. So now my first non TSR game, I think my first non TSR RPG. Wow. I think it was Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. You know, there was a time where, like, once those doors opened, because I ran a campaign of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, I ran a campaign of RuneQuest 2. I got RuneQuest 2, the hardback, from the Chaosium, with box sets of Rubble and Big Rubble and Pavis at a convention at Columbia University. Years later, I'd work as a sergeant in a precinct that covered Columbia University. But we went to a convention, my first convention at Columbia University, and the dealer room, the guy had some water damaged RuneQuest stuff, and I had just enough money to pick that up. And that was my first sandbox when I ran that later that summer. Death Angel, 1985 for me. I think it was seventh grade. First non TSR was Shadowrun. Yeah, I think that sixth grade, seventh grade is often where people start to find this stuff. And it took me a while to really think about it because I remember in seventh grade was junior high school, and you got to make a new friend. I remember sitting at lunch in seventh grade discussing AD&D with other people, other kids at over school lunch. So that was interesting. So now my mother is the one that got me my books. So I was introduced in guess December, January. That following July, my mother saw how excited I was because I was always borrowing Kenny's stuff to read it, and she got me the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Player's Handbook and a set of high quality dice. I don't know if they're Coplau or whatever. The dice themselves were $10. This is back in '81, so they weren't cheap. So God bless my mother for spending that money. I think the Player's Handbook was 12. The DM's Guide was 15. And I just devoured it. I read the crap out of it. All right, I gotta mute myself. There we go. I am now going to give away. There we go. I am going to give away 5 memberships to the Tavern. So if you are watching and you're not a member, you have a chance right now to get a 1 month membership to the Tavern. When you are a member, I'm going to be doing these uh, AMAs or members only for the chat aspect, probably once a month. I'm going to try to aim for, I'll ask in a poll what day works best, what time. But when you're a member, we do have polls up that you can participate in. And I do with the videos, most of the videos go up about 12 hours or so before they reach the general public, so members get an early peek. Just little things. And and members do have their own Discord server. It's a little slow right now, but let's see what we shall see. So, Joe Stone and the Esoteric. Oh, okay. Esoteric Order of Nerdity. Great old one. Nora Wolf and Louis Riccone. You've all been granted 1 month memberships. So, your middle school mascot was a red dragon. Nice. And the history teacher sponsored the D&D club. Later found out he also monitored at the local comics and game store during the summer. So I found out in ninth grade, right before graduating, that my earth science teacher, Mr. Denicky, was also a D&D player. Found out right before I got out of junior high school. I was like, and he was running a group at school for not the group of friends that I had for a different kids that were in his homeroom, I guess. So, listen, I always wanted to work in a game store, but then I worked retail for 8.5 years at a department store, and I realized I didn't want to work retail again. I don't. It isn't the same fun. And I'm not my listen. Retail taught me a lot of life skills. I will say that 8.5 years selling electronics, and then without having the title of manager, running the young men's bargain and candy departments. And then, as I was on the list for the NYPD, my operations manager put me back in electronics because he's like, "Listen, here's a chance for you to make a little extra money. You're going to need it." because he had a nephew that was in the NYPD, and he remembered the academy expenses, and they were expensive. You gotta like you gotta write checks for your uniforms and your dress uniform, and yeah, your firearm was covered, but not the sights. Ask me why. Um, big Civil War and that reenactment guy. A lot of history people are into that. Um, I took history as a major in college because I was undeclared for my first couple of years, and then it wouldn't let me register for classes. Back when you had to put those cards into the machine, you had to fill in the circles. It wouldn't let me register without having a declared major, so I had to declare my major, and I was like, well, I've been taking most of the history classes. I guess it's going to be history. Paul, my son and one of his friends are starting a Warhammer 40K wargaming club next year at their high school. Well, God bless. That's going to be an expense for a lot of parents. Warhammer and Warhammer 40K. You gotta you gotta have the real armies. You can't have knockoff armies. That's Angel. Yeah, retail is no fun. I worked retail selling ham radio gear for a couple of years. Worked at Radio Shack a few years too. I dated a girl who, after we broke up, she started managing a Radio Shack, and she told me, she was like, we would still remain friends, and she's like, my God, the management, I guess, for the metropolitan New York City area, she goes, it's such shit. Now this is going back 20 years, easily 20 years. I can't see. I don't think it was much better before it finally was, put 6 feet under with the coffin, because it I liked Radio Shack, but I generally liked Radio Shack more for the an idea of what's out there. And okay, and when my father had a tube TV set, you went there to test the tubes and see which tube you needed to replace to get your TV set working again. There was that, but toward the end there wasn't that. They, much like Circuit City, right? These are businesses that time moved on from. Oh, they all play with proxies. Okay, fair enough. That's the way. That's the way it should be. But I tried to get into wargaming when I was, I guess, my early years of college, and I picked up one. I think it was the Tobruk. It was a double blind, I think, from Game Designer Workshop. So, and I liked the idea of the double blind because it seemed more realistic than just moving things on. Well, yeah, but I couldn't get guys. My none of us started out with wargaming. We all started out with RPGs first. So, Paul, my son was shocked at the price of box sets when we went to the game shop today. I am sure. And I'm glad that he was shocked and not like, but can you get it for me? My niece is 13, and recently she had that Nirvana, oh sorry, Revelation. She had that V8 moment when my wife went in for Mother's Day last week. They took her shopping real quick. I didn't go in, and Shannon was like, "Oh no, those flowers are too expensive." It's like, "I'll help you. You got a little money. I'll put some money toward it." Nope, nope, they're too expensive. Nope. You and Uncle have done enough today. We were driving around all and stuff. You've done enough. And then when they saw the line, Shannon was like, "Is it really worth it, Auntie? Is it really worth it? Maybe I'll just make something for my mother." That is not the same kid that I would have been dealing with the prior year. So when your kids understand a little bit about how money doesn't grow on trees and finances, it it means something. Uh, Erudite DM. Welcome. Thank you. So just oh, and I think you've gifted. Thank you too. So Hector and the CP soap guy, enjoy your memberships. Again, membership does have some privileges. There are members only polls that do go up. I didn't even know you could post on YouTube, almost like a blog, and you can. And if you haven't checked it out, that's where I also link all the blog post stuff where it goes up with the free OSR. Definitely hit those posts. The resources there are great. Um, and again, videos, not the live streams, but the videos tend to go up early unless they're breaking news. Oh, Hector, you gifted. It didn't tell me who gifted. Well, Hector, thank you. Appreciate it. So, if you are a member, you'll get videos early, unless it's like, holy shit, what's going on? If it's breaking news, I'll break that rule and put it up immediately because I don't want to penalize people for stuff that is literally breaking news. Um, Now, like when it comes to me and the OSR, I uh, I found Castles and Crusades pretty early on. It was on buy.com, and buy.com allowed you to uh, get Castles and Crusades, the place handbook for like, I don't know, $8. And I was like, holy crap. So I bought a copy for myself, read it, full of typos. Love the trolls. Full of fucking typos, but very usable. And then I bought copies for my old gaming group. So my gaming group from high school and college, we get together once a year. We've done this uh, pretty much since 9/11. We lost a member of our gaming group, Paul Benedetti, at the Towers. Of the rest of my gaming group, 3 out of 4, not including myself, worked in the Towers. They got out safely. Paul did not. I responded to the Towers. So most of my gaming group had a link to the Towers. So after 9/11, we decided we were going to get together every spring around Paul's birthday and just remember him. And we've done it every year, but the year the Earth stood still, the year of the COVID. And yeah, so we are trying to work it out for this year. Uh, I have 2 weekends that don't work for me this summer, and they're both early June. The first 2 weekends of June, because I got two conventions. I got North Texas and I got Central New York on. But when you're trying to get 5 adults to have a schedule that matches up to everybody, it ain't always so easy. You know what I'm saying? But we're getting there. We're getting there. But it's I made a tradition now that every year we get together, I always gift something. Ever since their first year, so they've continued their gaming collection. They've wanted me to run D&D for the old group using a VTT, but we had stayed together after gaming ended. Gaming for me ended in March of '97 initially because in our case, that's when I graduated the academy. When I graduated the academy, my days off were Wednesday, Thursday, with working 6 to 2s, 5:30 at night to 2 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, our gaming ended until EverQuest. We kind of brought it back with EverQuest, Anarchy Online, City of Heroes, all the other stuff. Erudite, you ever know an NYPD detective, Scott Arena or Arena? Worked in the Bronx. Well, I worked in the Bronx from 97 to 2002. Uh, and we may have crossed paths, but I worked initially. I was assigned to the 4-2. I was there for 6 months, and then I was picked up by the Bronx Trace Unit 4-1 Precinct. So I went from Warriors of the Wasteland, which is how the 4-2 was known as, to Fort Apache. And if you've seen the movie Fort Apache, the Bronx, the outdoor scenes where they're storming the precinct with the rioters, that was filmed outside the 4-2. But the indoor scenes of the precinct were actually filmed in the old 4-1 precinct on Simpson Street. The new 4-1 is on Longwood, and it was already falling apart over I think it was in existence for like 3 years, and it was already falling apart from shoddy workmanship when we got there. So, but I mean, yeah, survived 9/11, moved with his family to Houston. Good guy. Yeah, I've seen Fort Apache. So Fort Apache, I all those blocks, all those where the scene where they are throwing bottles off the rooftops. Well, those buildings didn't exist when I was working in the 4-2 because those buildings were torn down and were our parking lot. We parked on rubble, literally parked on rubble and gravel. So I got to the South Bronx at the end of the crack epidemic. When I say it was the end, it was the height. When you'd arrest a Catholic priest, you'd arrest a doctor, a nurse. Crack knew no bounds, and we were a uniformed narcotics detail. And if you know anything about police work, uniform and narcotics is kind of like an oxymoron. But I got a lot of good training. I got plain clothes training. I got street narcotics enforcement training. I got a urban survival course. So I was in a good unit for a lot of training that was very useful. How did I meet Joe the lawyer, Rob Conley, Glenn, and the other usual tower denizens? All right. Let's try to go in order, I guess. Joe the lawyer. Uh, Joe and I realized early on in the days of blogging, and Joe had Joe the lawyer's wondrous imaginings. That was his blog, and Joe and I realized, holy crap, we kind of live close to each other. So, actually, I believe the first time we got together was like the night before Hurricane Sandy hit. We met at the Complete Strategist with Tavis Allison. Tavis was involved in Adventurer Conqueror King and in Dwemer Mount and that stuff. And Tavis is the one that gave me some inside baseball on some events that were coming up in the hobby, such as the potential of TSR to rise from the dead. This was the second coming, not the third coming. And he gave me some ideas about the Gygax Memorial Fund that I should take a peek into, which then again I planned to, and then Hurricane Sandy hit, and then that got pushed back a couple of months. But so that was the first time Joe and I met face to face. But we met online, and I think that Joe had already played in my Saturday night group. We had an online group. Initially, it was formed by Greg Christopher, and it was to play test 5e. And Greg, during the friends and family play test, um, chose an OSR player, a Pathfinder player, a 4e player. He wanted a well-rounded group to test the new system. And the core of that group stayed together, but then Greg was like, I can't. He burned out on play testing 5e. So I ran Osric. and I believe I brought Joe in with the Osric. All right, Death Angel. Catch you later. Um, Rob Conley. He, my first, and I remember this because sometimes you remember when you were an asshole. Uh, Rob's blog was set to approve all, you had to approve all comments. And this is back in a time when blogging was, excuse me, allergies are kicking my throat today. Um, a lot of these conversations were happening on blogs in the comments section, almost like a forum. They're going back and forth. And I forget the topic, but Rob must have been like doing important shit like family and work stuff. And my comment sat for like 8 hours. And then I said something really fucking rude to Rob as a following up comment, like, what, you're afraid of answering my statement or question because I'm right and you're wrong. I was an obnoxious fuck. Uh, Long story short, Rob never held that against me. So we became good friends, and then the gaming group morphed over time, and then Rob Conley was part of the gaming group along with Greg, myself, uh, Joe the lawyer, Tim Shorts. Um, so that's how and the days of the gaming group. It started. It was Saturday nights, but then that I had to drop that when I started working midnights because I was working those nights. So everything morphed. Although, and actually, Joe, or was Joe part of my once a month Friday group, which I was with Joe, um, Douglas Cole. Yeah, I don't know. I gotta. Things you get old. Things get a little mushy. Glenn. So I met Glenn at my first North Texas. Um, so Vince Florio and I had gotten to know each other a little bit, and he introduced me to Glenn. And Glenn was a hulking giant. I was like, oh my god! And but he introduced me to Glenn, and we did a short part of one of the Roll for Initiative episodes at the con. My first time ever being on a podcast. It was it was fun. It was interesting. And then we started doing the Brainstorm podcast, which I don't think you can find online at all. Vince has a habit of destroying that which he no longer continues with. But that's how I got to do a weekly cast with Glenn. And we just kind of, really hit it off. So, and always search each other out at the conventions. North Texas, Glenn and I, North Texas is like our second home. So it was always good to see Glenn at North Texas. So Glenn got to visit New York this past fall, which was a lot of fun. And yeah, so that's why Glenn and I do the afternoon streams on the random weekdays in addition to our twice a month, because we just enjoy each other and we work off each other pretty well. um, Tim Shorts, I also met by blogging. See, like a lot of these people, except for Glenn, are people I initially got to meet by blogging. Blogging was huge. Now I meet people because of the YouTube, right? Professor DM, uh, and Roll for Combat, and Bob World Builder. I get to meet these people because I'm a YouTuber. Now, I know people have also asked, why is it that you don't blog as much? I mean, there was a time when I was blogging sometimes 4 or 5 times a day. Well, YouTubing does take up time. And honestly, I get more feedback and more interaction, and most importantly, I reach more people with the YouTube channel than I do with the blog, but the blog still has a very special place in my life. It's been going on now for almost a decade and a half, and Rachel herself was very instrumental in me starting that up. So it's not going to go away. And if you want my thoughts on gaming, you're more likely going to get them here on the YouTube channel. If you want to know about stuff that's going on, uh, sales, Kickstarters, bundles, uh, free OSR, that works better on the blog side. I think the channel, the YouTube channel, and the blog work fairly well together. I think they work pretty well in supporting each other. I was never huge on forums. I know some people were, some people still are. I was never huge on forums. They just didn't have the same, I don't know, personal touch to me, I guess. Something like that. But yeah. Now, as an aside, called my personal touch, if you've seen my videos, if you've seen any of these live streams, and you meet me at a convention, I'm the same. Okay, there's no show, there's no extra put on. If you can go back and listen to my first, I don't know, two or three podcasts over on Spotify, it used to be Anchor, but if you listen to those first two or three, I kind of put on that fake neutral voice to get rid of the New York accent. Fuck it, the New York accent is who I am, and if you're here to enjoy that, hopefully you enjoy it. I mean, what else can I say? But no, yeah, that's conventions are where I meet a lot of people. By the way, and I go to conventions so I can put names and faces together because I am horrible with names. Horrible with names. All right, but I recognize faces very well. If I've met you and I've seen your face is burned into me, but your name might not be. That's why I used to joke when I was a rookie sergeant with my cops. I tell them, thank God you all wear name tags, because I would not be able to get the names right and know who I'm talking about as I do roll call. But is what it is, right? But at conventions, I get to see people, and it's like, is somebody going to come up and say, hey, I'm Joe? Well, I'll probably need to go, oh, you're Joe the lawyer. Okay. Because a lot of times the names that we use online aren't the names that match up to our name. Paul, trying really hard to get to North Texas next summer with my son. Paul, I have never had anything negative to say about North Texas. Only reason why I missed it in 2020 is because I had just gotten home from my second hospitalization. And if I had gone to North Texas, I would have had to have quarantined, which would have been a lot of fun, upon coming back to New York. Because they still held it. It was small, it was about 80 people. But they still held it because the hotel was holding them to it. And Texas did not shut down. So they held it. But, I mean, this year, Rich and I did Page in the Philadelphia metro area, Total Con, Marlboro, Massachusetts, WizardCon out in Michigan, Kalamazoo, I do believe. And then we're going to go to North Texas in a couple of weeks. The following weekend, Central New York Con, and then ShireCon in September. And as an aside, We already got our a better not but we had a bed and breakfast last year. We had an Airbnb 2 years ago in town. Got the same Airbnb. It's a two bedrooms, and we got Rob and his wife will be taking the second bedroom, which I thought was a really good way to do it. Erudite DM, attending my first North Texas RPG. For you, it's going to be your first. Greg Christopher, it's going to be their first. Joe's been there once. I think he's coming back next year. I don't think he's not making this year. But I have seen in my years more deals, more more of the company they're working out a contract, they're working out who's going to work with who. I've seen this stuff happen at like just side tables at North Texas, and it really is that kind of an atmosphere. It's very, very family friendly. You feel you know everybody. I certainly don't. I do joke that I will have my breakfast with Rach and I. If I don't get these chairs, I'm upset. There's two chairs and a table, literally right outside the ladies' room, like right across from it in the hallway, just outside the outer vending area. And I'll get my breakfast sandwiches, for Rach and I, and we'll sit there. Because if we eat in the restaurant area, well, first off, the breakfast is overpriced. But secondly, um, people get to stop by because I can't find everybody. How did the guy at Apex Tech back in the day? We can't call you, so you need to call us. Well, that's just it, right? I can't find everybody or know everybody that watches this channel or reads the blog as part of the community because you're seeing my face. I'm not seeing your face during this stuff, but I like to put myself out there so you can stop and talk. Matt Jackson has not come yet, but he's talking about it. Matt Jackson, however, did go to ShireCon a couple of years ago. That was nice and special. um, yeah, I know. Joe, listen, Joe's getting out there. We've got Joe and Greg both showing their faces now online on video. We're getting there, and Greg is going to be at North Texas. Don Samora is going to be at North Texas along with his wife. There's going to be a lot of people. It's going to be their first North Texas, and it's a very special con. Now, I am going to tell you a few secrets. Check out the silent auction. Usually, I think there's two silent auctions a day. Check them out. I've gotten some amazing finds. I got a Deities and Demigods and now it's a beater copy. Don't get me wrong, but I got it with the Cthulhu and Melnibonian mythos signed by all the artists. So you never know what you're going to find. You might pick some stuff up for a very low bid. Yes, the face reveal has been awesome, and I've always felt if you are going to connect with an audience, you gotta show your face, you gotta show your hair. By the way, has not been cut since last May, right before going to North Texas. Maybe I'll go back to the same guys and they can charge me twice because of my long hair. But or there's talk about them cutting it at the midnight auction. I don't know. God knows how I'll come out. That scares me. You know what I did a couple of years was I brought my original player's handbook for just have attendees to sign. If you're somebody that I knew, sign. Like I'm not a big person about bringing stuff to have people sign. I'm not too big on that, but to have people from my gaming group and my community sign, that to me, I got to dig that out. I think that might be in storage now. But I think that's very important, and I really do. I appreciate it all, but I appreciate that part of the community aspect. But for those that are going, I believe that James Raggy will be there for the third year in a row. James says that the only con that he sells more at than North Texas is Gen Con. That's pretty amazing. And you would say to yourself, but this is his audience, but doesn't already have the stuff. Well, he publishes a lot, and you can get James to sign it right there in front of you. Erudite DM, interested to play Shadow Dark and watch that community grow. Yeah, Shadow Dark was something that we, myself, and the others that do the random party said we would never do. We would never live stream an actual game session, and I think we did it twice for Shadow Dark because it's a game that you can that it's just fun. All right, you don't get stuck, you know, overthinking stuff. 5e, you can get stuck overthinking stuff, and that's not fun. Fun, funless. So, I'm going to wrap this up in a few minutes, I guess. Now, do want to address a few things. If you all remember, make sure that you go to the Tavern's YouTube page, click on posts, and there'll be members only posts. There'll be polls going up. I'm going to put up a poll to ask what you all want for this next members only. Again, when I do members only, anybody can watch. It's just that I do limit the interaction to members, but I'm only going to do these when I have some memberships to give away too. And I get 10 a month. I gave away 5 earlier on. I think next time I'll save them all for these. I think that'd be a lot more fun. Uh, all right, yeah, I got to know Joe, Tim, Flint, etc. Their Monday night live stream last year. Yeah, I mean, and you know, I've when I was a cop. All right, when I was a cop, you had a certain immediate bond with anybody else that was a cop. Right, I could be in a different jurisdiction, and it still works this way with retirees. I'll be at a convention and there's a retired cop from Boston, and we're right into it. But when you're a cop and somebody's in need, a member of the service, their family's in need, everybody pulls together. And I found that is very similar in gaming, but I find it even more so in old school gaming. The OSR really pulls together, and I'm very appreciative of that. 4-2 is the answer. What is the question? The question is, what was Tenkar's first precinct out of the academy? 4-2 precinct. Warriors of the Wasteland led the city in homicides when we got out there in March of '97. We had one street corner that had 4 people shot, but 1 on each of the compass points. In over the course of 4 days, I believe it was, 4 different people shot at each compass point. It was a busy precinct. It was you learned a lot, and I really do appreciate the fact. Didn't at the time, but being a South Bronx copper at the academy, you learned a lot. It was pretty good. Yeah, 4-2 was my first. 401 was my second. 2-6 was 2-6. The hole in the donut in Harlem, Columbia University. That was my third, and the NTX live streams, even with all the technical difficulties, sound quality issues, are some of my favorite episodes, and that's because we don't run away to a room away from the crowds. We want you to get a feeling for the convention. We want you to get a bit of that atmosphere, and I think that's important. It always has been. It always has been. And Wednesday nights are the used to be the quietest nights because it was the pre-con get it on, but now the pre-con get it on is a lot bigger. Yeah, a hole in the donut. So listen, I don't know if you've heard the expression having a rabbi in the NYPD, but having a rabbi in the NYPD generally meant that you had a hook. It was a nicer way of saying that you had a hook. I didn't come on the job with a hook. Uh, but when I did get it promoted, I got to the 2-6, the hole in the donut, and I got there because a sergeant who I had worked with as a cop and was friends with, and she knew people, and her husband, who retired as a chief, knew people, and they got me, and they knew the CO of the 2-6, so they got me sent to the 2-6. It was a command of I don't want to say the day tours were not the most aggressive until they got the Bronx cop out there, and my deal when I got to the 2-6 was I shared a squad with somebody who only wanted to do the desk as a sergeant. So I told roll call, don't give me the desk, just give me patrol every day. Just give me patrol. And when you're out there with your fellow officers and they know they can rely upon you and they know that you're going to. I was on meal and I heard a job come over that was called in by Columbia Security to one of my units directly, and I stepped over to the point, and I'm running out of the station house with my gun belt around my neck like a bandolero, bandito, with my in my undershirt because my other shirt, my uniform shirt, and my shield and my vest were all drying off from the summer heat. And the cop I had just given lost time to allow me to leave early was signing out and saw me grabbing keys from the desk for any RMP. And he grabbed the keys, drove me, and we got to that unit's job before the sergeant who was covering me and was out in the field got to it. And that was their own sergeant. So that was the kind of sergeant that I wanted to be because that was the kind of cop you're going to be, you know. I didn't care how you look professional enough, but get the job done. And don't embarrass me, and I'll be there for you. You're driving up from Houston Wednesday for North Texas. 2 years ago, we landed in Houston for the weather and almost had to drive from Houston, but thankfully we got the plane back in the air to go back to Texas. Yeah, Matt, sorry you were late. We're going to do this AMA-ish type of stuff once a month, probably on Sundays. And uh, members can ask whatever they want to ask, and we'll give away some memberships so people that are lurking can participate at one of it. John Monk, one of my friends, family members where I live now, is a captain in a hard area. You know, there's something about being in a soft house or a hard house or an A house. I mean, they used to call them A, B, and C back in the day. And an A house was you were busy, you were hopping, and a C house was vacation time. Um, and I would rather be busy. And as a sergeant, I would rather be busy. And because idle hands are the devil's tools. And if you're in a slow command, you're more likely to have cops get themselves into trouble doing shit they shouldn't do. Just saying. Just saying. Not saying I didn't do stupid shit, but like my stupid shit was, the sergeant's we're gonna have a beach party in the middle of the South Bronx. There's an area with sand in Hunts Point. Okay, all right, go out and do our enforcement in the first 2 hours, and then suit down, buy some cases of beer, buy something for the grill, and enjoy yourself, and then sign off for the end. Statute of limitations is long gone. Uh, Ajahn Monk, I have seen far too much death and destruction and horrible things in my 8+ years in the Middle East and Africa as an anti-terrorist. So much innocent death and suffering. I and that's the thing, right? I mean, like on 9/11, I learned a lot about myself, and my instinct wasn't to run, as others I was with were, but my instinct was to turn to my sergeant and go, same one that was my hook in the end, and go, Michelle. And she's like, yes. As I'm watching Tower 2 coming down, I go, what are we going to do? She goes, well, what do you think we should do? I go, we're Bronx cops. She goes, that's right. So let's take our nightsticks and hit people. I was joking when I said it, but not really because people were in shock. And I literally did hit people on their calves, the back of their calves, to get them moving, to get them away because we were at City Hall. You learn a lot about yourself when you're in those situations. And I will be honest, I didn't know I was suffering from PTSD until after I retired. And then was able to start processing the shit that I've seen over the years. And I know too many people who committed suicide, amongst other things. And then I realized, wow, I did a very good job at bottling it up. Flint, thank you for joining. So, yes, you know, I have the ultimate respect for veterans, for cops, for firefighters, for EMTs. Oh my God. In New York City, they are underpaid for what they're doing. By far, they really are the forgotten service. And it's a damn shame. That's one of the things that I learned how serious EMS was in New York City. Now they're part of FDNY, but when I was in the 4-2 precinct, we had an EMS station house in the confines, and they would always put out two of their buses, their ambulances, would always stop at the station house to sign out radios, so they could listen to the NYPD jobs and be there before they were even sent by their job. And I didn't have that experience again until I was a sergeant in the 2-6, and I actually had the desk that day, and I had EMS come in, and they asked to sign out a radio, and I went, "You guys from the area?" Like, "Oh no, they we're normally up in the Bronx, but we're covering this whatever sector it was for them." And I laughed. They're like, "Why are you laughing?" Because I haven't seen anybody sign out a radio since I was a cop in the 2-6 from your job. So thank you. I was always happy to have EMS around. Agile Monk, years of injuries and chemical exposures have kept me medically challenged at times, but I did finally have to face the PTSD. Yeah, 9/11 gave me Hodgkin's, so that was cancer. 9/11, which by the way led to my congestive heart failure. I also have some interesting scarring in my lungs, which apparently is a stained glass effect. I was interested to find that out. Uh, Fort Apache, the Bronx. My thoughts on Fort Apache, the Bronx, having served in the commands that it was filmed in. As I mentioned earlier, the 4-2 is where they filmed the outdoor scenes of the precinct, where they were riding and throwing stuff. The outdoor scenes were at the 4-2. The indoor scenes were actually at the old 4-1. And I knew a lot of the locations. Reverend James A. Polite. You knew all. I where the bar they go into, the outer scene of the bar was 173 and Southern Boulevard. It was a Spanish bar when I was there. We used to go in there occasionally just to get warm. But the inner scenes of the bar were filmed in the 4-0 precinct at a place called Schlitz's. And Schlitz's had just plywood, painted plywood for windows. It was a cop bar when it was open. It was run by an old German lady and her two sons, but when she passed, they didn't want to keep it going. It only served one beer on tap, Schlitz. I kid you not. Uh, yeah, no, agile. We take the challenges God gives us, and hopefully we move forward with it. I mean, my other option would be not to have survived 9/11. So I'll take it. And I knew enough that did not survive it. And honestly, as morbid as it's going to be, when I do finally pass, I have enough complications that my death will likely be a line of duty death because of 9/11. Doesn't make my death any easier when it happens, but that's just part of it. All right, folks. I am going to wrap this up. I will be back later on this week with Glenn for an afternoon one. Do appreciate everybody that joined up today. Thank you. Your support really means the world to me. Um, and some hopefully newsworthy video, but if not, I'll have something up tomorrow. And of course, the shorts. But the shorts, if you've watched these live streams or regular videos, you've already seen everything in the shorts. The shorts just strip via AI, evil AI, strips out from the regular videos and gives me shorts, so it adds just a different audience sometimes. All right, folks. Thank you all so much. God bless. Oh God, Agile. Thank you so much, man. I Ryan, Mark, Nick Knack, Chen Husun, and Peace Chanter. Enjoy your free membership. Make sure you check the members postings. I will be having a poll up shortly, and I'll catch you all later. And for those that are now members, regular videos go up earlier for members, usually by about 12 hours. All right, folks. Thank you, Agile. I'll let her know I do appreciate it. Night all.